So it's that time of the month where I actually go over the health of the Drip Network protocol. So I decided to do this on a monthly basis. I gather my intel at the end of each month and I display them at the beginning of the next one. So several elements go into this. I did something like this last month. So I'm gonna mimic and add a few things also going forward. So we're gonna discuss whatever is happening right now. So disregarding whatever is coming up, everything that is promised, those are things that again are very speculative. So we're gonna talk about the current status. So how are investors behaving in regards of the protocol? My name is Roy and I hope to install some value in everything I'm about to say. So before I actually get into this, I just want to take a moment and say that if you do like whatever I put on this channel, the content of this video and everything else, feel free to sub and join us. You can also go on Telegram. We have a nice community. All the links are going to be displayed below, so feel free to do so. Everything is public. So I'm going to immediately jump into my Excel sheet because this is where I did display all the information. And we're going to go over these comparing November data to December data because we concluded December and we're moving forward. And also I'm gonna hint and talk about a few things and the recent movement that the community has started, which also helps, you know, the overall health. So first things first, December data at the end of December 2022, those are our current faucet obligations. Now, a few people have pointed out that even though this is the number that you would see in total, so that's how much drip is inside a faucet, which is the certificate of deposit of the drip network. Now, putting the element of max wallets into the equation. So out of this amount, 93.56 million, there is bound to be a few max wallets, correct? But keep in mind that a max wallet can pull out a total of, I think it's north of 140 drip per day. So take into account the amount that is being generated every single day, which is slowly approaching 1 million. And, you know, I forecast that is going to be the case at the beginning of January. I mean, somewhere in the middle of January, most likely. Even if there were like 10, 20 max wallets, it will still be a fraction of the amount of drip that is being generated that could potentially be claimed, hydrated, etc. So I'm not gonna, you know, dwell on this, but let's address these numbers. So in terms of growth from November to December, our faucet obligations have actually grown more compared to November 30 and November 9th, even though the number of days, sorry, this is the amount that you should be looking at, even though the amount of days is less, but still the growth is more than about 8% if you compare the two. And the total growth in absolute numbers is about 19.2 million in obligations. 93.56 minus 74.35. So our obligations are still growing at a very fast rate. And to concur, December data, that's the growth versus November. That's the whole month, by the way. So you see, so versus, so that's the whole month versus November, because November here took into account the whole month versus 21 days between these two dates. So we're still hovering at that 23 to 25% that started from September. As you can see, the trend, September, October, November, December, we're still within that range. So a quarter of the faucet is being added every single month, which is huge, if you ask me. And that is also displayed by the average growth, which is this one. That's the current average growth overall in 2022. That has been concluded at 26.5% per month. All right, keep that in mind. Now, if we take into account the first number, we could clearly see that the obligations are growing at a very fast pace, and unfortunately, nothing can offset this at this very moment. Now again, this alone cannot determine what we have coming up next, but let's keep going. So the second thing I like to look at is the liquid drip being held in wallets. All right. Now, this number has been doing okay-ish, even though the total amount of drip hasn't dropped at all. It actually increased if you clearly see the year to date, which is December versus November. So on a 30-day period, we did grow at a total of 73.3k liquid drip in wallets. So from 1.638 to 1.711 at an average of 3.5k almost per day added in wallets. We're talking about liquid drip. Even though in the grand scheme of things, because we have millions in the faucet, that number is pale in comparison, but still the drip, the tokens being held in wallets is increasing, and that is also something negatively affecting price action, because as wallets build up their liquid drip positions, and not doing anything with them is kind of harmful, because there's only one way out. A small price increase and people would sell up their drip. So I don't see any other way out unless some new utility comes in where that drip can actually be utilized somewhere else. All right, so this is my second negative factor overall. And now to put things into perspective in regards to what is the percentage that is being actually claimed, hydrated, etc., because this also helps us, right? So even though if we look at price action, now I'm gonna go and select 1 month, because this is the time frame that we're discussing right now, right? So I went to the screener, I'm gonna touch base on the pancake swap pair and see how we're doing there. So here we are, all right? So we started the month at 1.5 bucks, now we're at 0.77. Now we have a nice small spike here, and that's what I'm gonna talk about soon. But disregarding this, we dropped about, 50% of the amount we started with. So 1.5, 50% of this is around 75 cents, more or less. So yeah, but the price still dropped overall since the beginning of December. So taking that into account, the average faucet size in December has grew from 68.5 million in November to that much in December. And by that I mean, at the course of the month, disregarding day-to-day fluctuations, that's how much there is at any point during December, all right? And that would give me a total of tokens being generated equal to that much. And you have to, so those tokens are being given every single day, right? 1% a day. So what can you do with those tokens? You have two options, correct? You can either claim them or hydrate them. Now, remove the liquid drip that is being added every single day, because those are subsequently claimed and put in the wallet. So that is how much is left, correct? To be claimed or sold, because when you claim, you either keep them in or you sell them or you airdrop them. Now, dripnetwork.ca gives us the average hydrating frequency based on that nice curve right here. That is always ever growing with the number of drip in faucets, correct? So averagely speaking, that's how much is being hydrated out of that total at the ratio of around 56%. So what is left, which is 44.05%, is to be claimed. But we all know that is not the case in terms of tokens being sold, because those tokens, even though they are claimed indeed, because there's no other options at the end of the day, they're not being held in wallets and they're not being sold. So what is happening here? That is the total remaining amount, and roughly 1% of this is being held in wallets, correct? If you remember, that's how much on average per day, and that's how much is actually being claimed. So everything else is going to be split between selling those tokens and airdropping them. Now, if all of those tokens were to be sold every single day at the average price of 1.1 bucks, which is actually the average price, I mean, taking into consideration how much the price was at the beginning of December, And currently, so we have roughly north of 400K of potential sell pressure. We don't even have anywhere near that amount per day. Not only speculation wise, I know for a fact that we barely have about 5 to 7% of this amount being sold every single day. So with that in mind, what is happening? Everything else is being airdropped to new wallets and added to already existing drip investors. So just to prove my point in regards to actual drip being sold, so I'm gonna add a new metric. I didn't add this previously, to be honest, but I decided to add this on top of everything else, and that is how much volume actually is being generated every single day. So I'm gonna monitor this every single day just for research purposes. So just taking into account today, you can clearly see that sell pressure is about 20K. So adding the volume on PancakeSwap plus the drip DEX and amounts to roughly 20K. You can clearly see that falls in the range of whatever I just said, 5 to 8% of that amount. 5% of the amount is 20K indeed. So everything else is just being airdropped. So just to put things into perspective, why this is not something really well received in my personal opinion, it's because the more people airdrop to new wallets, the more they are centralizing the total supply, because they are minting much more exponentially as they go forward, and thus they are adding those tokens into more wallets of their own. And that, you know, narrows the supply to a few investors. But that will take a long time, and that is also speculative based on the fact that nothing else will be coming that will actually burn some of those drip tokens. Two more metrics: the total supply, because that will, you know, evaluate inflation, and the drip balance in the tax vault, because that also shows in retrospect if we need inflation to keep paying out those people. Now, inflation unfortunately hasn't been curbed. It's still increasing at a very fast pace, from 4 million at the end of November to about 5.4 million at the end of December. So about 1.391 million overall has been added to the total supply. I'm curious to see where we're gonna end up at the end of January, because if inflation slows down, correct, because we're gonna do ratios. So if that slows down, that will potentially signify that we're there, right? That's the bottom. But again, this is one of several factors that go into the equation, because again, if the tax vault, for example, decreases from that amount at the end of January and even goes to zero, we're right where we started. Now, we were actually hovering at a tax vault close to zero for a few weeks. So why does this number actually show a close to 300K drip inside that vault? It's because the community took it upon themselves to start an initiative where they actually gonna take drip tokens and split them between burning them and putting them into the tax vault in order to, you know, help that inflation and stop it, or put the brakes on it for a while, at least until new stuff comes in, right? That's the point. That's what I want to do. So in this scenario where I said that I'm not going to take into account the fact that whatever's coming up, burn, because I did speak a lot about burning models. I spoke a lot about what actually is the thing that could stop us from keep getting inflated. But you know, you can speak, you can say your piece, you can give advice, you can give your opinion, but none of this matters if the team is not taking action and doing these things. So the community is doing that, right? They are taking things into their own hands, upon themselves, to actually help themselves overall. And that is something to be proud of, I must say. Now, is that the right decision? Is everyone acting in the best interest, or some people are acting in the best interest of themselves by doing this so they can sell more eventually? I don't know, you know. So human behavior tends to trust one another, you know, at first glimpse, at first instinct. But hopefully that will pan out here, and we And we're not gonna enter a situation where some bad actors decided to do this so they can sell at a higher price. I hope everyone is acting into their selfless interest for everyone's sake. So those are the few elements, the few metrics that go into play to determine the health of the protocol. So I did lay out them all. I showed you the numbers. Now to answer the question, are we at the bottom? I would say no. Now, even though we did drop to 60 cents and the price has rebounded to 88 cents, that doesn't mean much, because you are right now putting dust under the rug. You are using the power of the community to slow down inflation, you know, to push the price a bit up, to add to the reservoir, and kind of bake in a small uptrend in a way. Because in regards to volume, nothing has changed much. We're selling less, but buys are still the same. So demand hasn't increased for me to say that the price did, and etc. So those are things that are being done just to slow down everything else that has been on a downfall ever since. And just to prove a point, I mean, if you just look at the chart 3 months back, you can clearly see that at any point in time, we did have a small, you know, turn of events where something happens, we have a small upscale in demand, and then boom, here we are. We drop more, small upscale, drop more, same pattern. You can clearly see 6 months back. The pattern is repeating itself at a very alarming rate, correct? You can clearly see up, down, up, 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 up. So this is not something new. This is not something that could, you know, signify the bottom, because we've seen this pattern repeat several times over. What does, however, are metrics and behavior of investors. And from what we can see and what we can conclude, everything is almost exactly the same as it was last month and the previous month. So far, just to conclude all of this, really proud of what the community is doing. Unfortunately, I don't think we're at the bottom. I could be wrong, however, if something comes up and everything else, you know, shifts to the upside. Hopefully, new utility will do that for us. Hopefully, we're gonna burn more tokens. Hopefully, something will be added on top of this, or even the core infrastructure will be changed. So, with that being said, I'm gonna conclude this one. I'm looking actually forward to doing the next one and keep going after that. So, thank you if you stuck around till the end. See you in the next one. Have a good one.